Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's June 2024 REC release drop-in session. My name is Jenny, and I'll be facilitating today's event, and I'm joined by Holly Law, the Change Release Manager. Just before we get started, I just want to go through a few housekeeping things. So we ask that you keep your cameras and your microphones off. The event will be recorded, and so you'll be able to access the recording and the slides on the REC portal. We'll also be using Slido today, and I'll share the QR code in the next slide and add a link to the Slido in the chat. And there will be opportunities for a Q&A, so if you have any questions at any point, just pop it into Slido. So this is the Slido QR code, and I'll also pop a link in the chat. There are still a few people joining, so they can scan the QR code. Right. This is our agenda for today, and I will hand over to Holly.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks all for attending. So I will run through the changes planned for June 2024 delivery, and then I will go into more detail about each of the changes that are planned for that release. And then, as Jenny mentioned, there will be opportunities to ask questions at the end of the session once I've gone through all the changes. So in scope for the June 2024 release, we have R43, which is commissioning of works by the Crowded Meter Room Coordinator, or the CMRC, to resolve issues in crowded meter rooms. Then we've got R64, which is creating a meter operator agent and MoCOP installer. We've got R70, which is provision of enduring test environments. R142, and that's amendment to multiplication factor enumerations to support hydrogen trials. We've got R98, which is optional fuzzy searching within EES. 158, which is amendment to the supplier registration report, or the MAP report methodology. And then we've got R63, which is addition to key information to all ServiceNow tickets. All of those changes have been approved and agreed and will be going into the June release. And then the last one we've got is R167, which is change process improvements following code manager review. And that one is to be agreed. So the first one, R43, and this is commissioning of works by the Crowded Meter Room Coordinator, or CMRC, to resolve issues in crowded meter rooms. So this change proposal will introduce new processes, and they will allow a Crowded Meter Room Coordinator to contract with REC accredited metering equipment managers, or MEMS, to act on behalf of that CMRC so that they may resolve issues within a crowded meter room on behalf of all registered suppliers within that meter room. The MEMS undertaking that work on behalf of the CMRC will be referred to as the Crowded Meter Room MEM, or the CMRM. Parties impacted by this change, suppliers, we have metering equipment managers, Alt-Hanco, and distribution network operators. And then there's quite a few REC products impacted by this change as well. So we've got Schedule 1, interpretations and definitions. We have Schedule 14, which is metering operations. Data specification, which is the market message catalogue. We also have standard definitions and the electricity data access matrix, or the DAM. And this change will be implemented in full on the 28th of June 2024. The next change we have going in is R64, and this is creating a meter operator agent and MoCOP installer. So this one will seek to clarify obligations of each type of those metering providers, and it's reintroducing the distinction between a meter operator agent and a MoCOPA installer. This was removed by retail code consolidation. They were merged into a new category, which was metering equipment managers, or MEMS. but it also included gas metering providers. So whilst both types of these organisations can provide metering services, not all MEM obligations within the REC can apply to both organisations. So this CP looks to separate those, so it's clear what obligations apply to which. Parties impacted by this change, we have the REC code manager, meter equipment managers and metering scheme auditor. Products, so we've got the REC main body, we've got Schedule 1, interpretations and definitions, Schedule 6, which is performance assurance, Schedule 14, metering operations, Schedule 15, metering accreditation, we've got the performance assurance reporting catalogue, or the PARC, and we've got consolidated metering code of practice, or COMCOP. This change will be implemented in full on the 28th of June 2024. And the next slide just provides a little bit more information around the distinction between them. So MEM, or Meter and Equipment Manager, is the collected term for an appointed MAM and MOA. And the definition within Schedule 1 means, as applicable, for electricity, the meter operator agent, or MOA, or for gas, the meter asset manager, or MAM. So for gas, we have MAM, and this means the supplier agent appointed by a gas supplier in accordance with the meter operation schedule. The MAM is accountable for the installation, replacement, repair and maintenance of the gas metering equipment by a qualified AMI or AMI. And then we have the MOA, which is on the electricity side. And this means the supply agent appointed by an electricity supplier in accordance with the metering operation schedule. And again, accountable for the installation, replacement, repair and maintenance of electricity metering equipment by a qualified EMO. And that brings us to AMI and EMO. So the AMI is an approved meter installer. It's an entity which is approved or which is seeking approval under the metering accreditation schedule, and it undertakes the installation, replacement, repair and maintenance of gas metering equipment. And then we've got EMO, which is the same, but just for electricity. As Jenny mentioned, these slides will be available on the REC portal. So I know that's a lot of information to take in, but you can refer back to them and this will be included on there as well. And we'll move on to the next change, which is our 70, and this is provision of enduring test environments. So at the moment, the REC does not require the central switching service and switching operator to provide enduring test environments and test data for use by REC parties when making system changes for REC change proposals or internal system updates. So this change proposal has been raised to introduce those obligations into the REC. So the parties impacted by this change, we have the central switching service and the switching operator. And the products impacted by this change, Schedule 1, interpretations and definitions. We have Schedule 5, which is change management. Schedule 25, which is the central switching service. Schedule 26, switching service management. We have the central switching service definition, and then there's going to be 2 new Category 3 documents as part of this change. And those will be CSS Test Data Management Plan and CSS Environment Management Plan, and they'll be included in the baseline statement and published on the REC portal. And again, this change will be implemented in full on the 28th of June 24. Next slide, we have R0142. And this is amendment to multiplication factor enumeration support hydrogen trials. So we have the H100 hydrogen gas trial, and that involves the supply of hydrogen gas to households in place of natural gas. However, the gas that's supplied, or the hydrogen gas that's supplied to houses within this trial needs to be billed in a way that it matches had they been supplied by gas. So to facilitate that, we need to introduce a multiplication factor enumeration within the data specification, and that will replicate the hydrogen's calorific value, and that will allow accurate billing for customers within that trial. Parties impacted by the change are gas suppliers, meter equipment managers and central data service provider. The data specification will be the product impacted. And again, the change will be implemented in full on the 28th of June. The next change we have for the June release is R98, and that's optional fuzzy searching within EES. So this will seek to introduce new configuration settings into the EES API, and that will allow when you're searching for items within EES, the data that's returned will be exact or fuzzy. So an example of that is you might search for one street and it will bring back results that contain a 1. So it will be 1, 11, 10 and so on. Parties impacted by this change, electricity inquiry service provider and electricity inquiry service users as well. There are currently no REC products impacted by this particular change, and again it will be implemented in full on the 28th of June. We also have R0158, which is amendment to the supplier registration report or the MAP report methodology. So at the moment, meter asset providers or MAPs can query the gas inquiry service as part of their billing process, and that's to establish the registered gas suppliers of their portfolio. The reports which MAPs can query within the that they can query the GES are not currently working exactly as intended, and that is because of incorrect wording in the GES definition. So this particular change will seek to rectify that. Parties impacted by the change are meter asset providers, and the product will be the GES definition, and that will be updated. Again, this change will be implemented in full on the 28th of June. The next change we have is R63, which is addition of key information to all ServiceNow tickets. So this change proposal originally looked to improve the key business information required by DNOs included in ServiceNow tickets, which were produced by the CSS Service Desk. This change was scheduled for release on the 12th of April. However, delays in the technical development of the change were raised to the code manager. So the technical implementation of R63 was delayed until this release, 28th of June. However, the changes to the REC schedules went ahead as planned on the 12th of April. So this change is just implementing that technical element of it. Parties impacted by the change, electricity retail data service providers, gas retail data service providers, the switching operator and energy suppliers. The product impacted by this particular change was Schedule 26, Switching Service Management Schedule. However, that was implemented on the 12th of April. And as I've mentioned, the technical solution will be delivered as part of the June 2024 release. And then finally, the last change that we have on the list is R167, change process improvements following code manager review. So the code manager has been working with internal and external stakeholders to identify opportunities for improvement to the REC change process. And this has highlighted a series of amendments to the current REC change process that would enable a more efficient and streamlined process and therefore a quicker process. This includes introducing the ability to tailor the process dependent on an individual case. So you can raise change issues that can be developed and progressed through expert groups. Parties impacted by this particular change, we have REC professional service, REC technical service, REC performance assurance service, all REC parties and all REC service users. And the products to be impacted are interpretations and definitions, Schedule 1 and Schedule 5 change management. This change is targeting an implementation date of the 28th of June, pending approval. And there's also going to be a change improvements webinar on the 20th of June, which will go into a lot more detail about the changes planned as part of that release. So I do encourage people to attend that. And then finally, the last slide, I won't go into all the detail of this. It's more a visual and it will be published to the portal. And it's just a different view and a simpler view, hopefully, of all the products that are going to be impacted as part of this release, broken down by category. And then you can also quite easily see which changes are going to be impacting which schedules or which rec products. Post-implementation support. So if you do need any help as part of this release, you can raise a service desk ticket, or you can email inquiries@recmanager.co.uk, or you can contact your operational account manager. If your inquiry is relating to a technical issue with the gas inquiry service portal, you can contact ExoServe. If it's relating to a technical issue with the electricity inquiry service portal, you can email support@CNC, or you can use the switching service management system to get help and support by raising a ServiceNow ticket. And again, all the links are on there, and this will be published to the portal. I'm going to stop there, Jenny, for Q&A.
Thank you, Holly. I'm just having a look at Slido now, and it appears there aren't any questions on there. If anybody wants to raise their hand and ask directly, then they can do that too. I think maybe we'll wait a minute and just see if anybody has anything they want to ask, and then if not, then be a fairly short drop-in session. Great. Well, I'll take silence as golden. If there are any questions, like Holly said, you can raise a ticket with the service desk. Well, thank you everyone for attending. This was a short one. We hope you found it useful. Just before you go, we do ask that you provide some feedback just on the session and how we can, what we've done well, what we can improve for future sessions. And thank you very much.